Hello, everyone. This is Scott Masha from Small Space for Young Entrepreneurs, and I am sitting with Matt Ruttenberg from Education Life Incorporation, a retirement service. And today we're going to talk about the 411 of 401. This is it's a great time to speak about it because a lot of small businesses that love to grow and want to grow want to be able to talk about their retirement. What can they plan on as far as the specifics of 401k? So I decided to bring Matt on because he's a specialist in this topic. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the business that you work for and what do you guys do for a living?
Sure. Yeah. So again, my name is Matt Ruttenberg. I'm the CMO of Life Inc. Retirement Services. I've been in the business for the finance business from all corners of it for the last 17 years now. I started with my own personal financial planning firm. Ended up selling that 3-4 years ago. Merged my 401k business into Life Inc. Retirement Services. So now I'm part owner, CMO, and basically what we do is we design, we build custom 401ks and retirement plans in general. So not just the 401k. So anything for a business owner, we design it and we build it for them custom. We build it to whatever they need.
So let's talk about some of the types of 401ks that you would like to explain to us. And just off of a couple notes that you and I went over just during the week, some of the ones that intrigued me or had pulled me a little bit closer into, and I'll be honest with you, I like big shiny names and words. Let's go with like Safe Harbor, the 401k. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, a safe harbor 401k is, and I like to talk about these plans basically based on what is your priority. Are you trying to save for your own retirement? Are you trying to recruit employees? Are you trying to retain employees? Are you trying to max out and save money on taxes? And it can be all of those. But what is the number one priority? And a safe harbor 401k is kind of like you said, the shiny product out there. Usually, it's pretty well known. A lot of people don't know there's four kinds of safe harbor 401ks out there actually, but it's an IRS pre-approved matching investing schedule. So basically, how much do you want to match or contribute to your employees? How long do you want them to be there before they can take that with them? And as long as you choose one of these four plans, a safe harbor 401k plan, the owner and the highly compensated employees, which a highly compensated employee by definition is 135,000 or more, is what you pay them, or certain family members. But basically, that will allow them to max out. So 20,500 for 2022 is what you can put away. Otherwise, if you don't choose a safe harbor, the
Hmm.
owners and the highly compensated actually are limited on how much they're allowed to save because the IRS is all about fairness to the employees. So
Hmm.
the fairness is the employees need to have equal opportunity to save for retirement just as the owner does. So you have limitations if you don't get into the safe harbor 401k space.
Yeah, that's a great topic right there for the small business side, especially my business. For running, we're anywhere between a 1 to 3 man team. Now,
Hmm.
does that hold against me? I mean, can I have any amount of employees that I want, or should I
Oh,
be
sure.
focusing on a different type of 401k to help smaller individual business owners out?
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to your what is your priority, right?
Hmm.
So if your priority is to save as much as possible, and by the way, what your question was, there are no limitations on the safe harbor. If you have one full-time employee, and by definition, full-time is 1,000 hours or more
Hmm.
per year, if you have to have a quote unquote a group plan, and a safe harbor is what you're going to be allowed to max out. Now, if your goal is to max out or not worry about what the employees are contributing. If it is purely for recruitment and retention, then it might not be because you have that. I'm just going to say a 4% match on your employees contributions. Then maybe a traditional 401k would be better. In the traditional 401k is I call it a cafeteria style plan, meaning you can pick and choose and mold the plan as you want it based on your budget. And the whole purpose there is to recruit and retain high quality, because not only are you trying to, in the marketplace, you're trying to um, get as many clients as you want, but you're also trying to recruit high quality employees. So that is also the competition that you're in, is trying to have the highest quality employee that you can get.
Now, the problem about having that is when you're trying to receive the high quality employee that you're looking for, now we're going to have to run into what normally becomes the problem for small businesses, and that's price.
Right.
What ends up happening in that circumstance in today's day and age, and let's be serious, Matt, in today's day and age, a lot of the employees already want the higher payroll. And with the higher payroll, if you're trying to offer them a retirement plan that's going to be adequate for them by the time they hit 65, 70, that's a lot of cheddar out of the system. So how does
Yeah.
a small business work around that?
So, there's in the 401k space, and there's other types of plans besides the 401k as well. So there's administration costs to keep you compliant, basically, and then the cost of the actual match that you're giving, or the contribution that you're giving, you're putting towards your employees' retirement. To battle that cost, it's really trying to create and mold the plan that's going to best fit. So, for example, you are trying to retain these and recruit these high quality employees. You want to make sure that the plan is rich enough to bring them, so you are in competition with your other competition, but you also want them to stay longer, because turnover is a huge problem in small businesses. So, for example, a standard match would be 4%. You don't have to have any match at all if you don't want, in one of these cafeteria style plans. You can, a lot of the times, it's giving the employee the opportunity to save through payroll deduction. Payroll deduction is I'm going to call it a psychological barrier. So if an employee wants to save for retirement, having it come out of their checking account is much different and much more difficult than having it come out of your paycheck, because it feels like a bill, and nobody wants too many bills out there. So you want to have as many payroll deductions as you can, because it's out of sight, out of mind. So just having that alone, and depending on everyone's industry is different, of course. Those are available. Now, there's something called a payroll deducted IRA as well. This is technically not a 401k plan or even a retirement plan in the IRS's eyes. This is a group of IRAs that everyone has, all your employees have, and all you're really doing is withholding the money for them and sending it to the investment company that they want. Sometimes that's all they want. Sometimes they just want to know that, here's my 401k plan. This is what I can offer. This is what they're offering me, and that's it. That's a lot of times that's all they're asking. But you can easily have them stay 5 years to make sure your match stays with them. So the money that you did give them as a match, that'll come back to you if they leave in 2 or 3 years. It's not always going to go with them. It's not, and that's called the vesting schedule that you can mold however you want. 5 years is the maximum and something like that.
How many? So just out of a broad technique,
Mm-hmm.
how many 401k plans are there really?
So there's solopreneur, I call them, where you don't have any employees. There's 2 or 3 there. If you have group plans, there's probably another 4. Well, you can probably get up to 8, because there's 4 different types of safe harbors on their own. So again, it comes down to what your budget is. It comes down to your goal. There's some, a simple IRA. A simple IRA is very, very popular. A lot of people have heard of this. And it's very similar to a safe harbor 401k. The only difference is it's simple. It's very, very easy to implement for the employee or for the employer. It has a little bit more manual back-end processes involved, but that is a great place to start. You do have to contribute, just like the safe harbor, a pre-approved match schedule. But simple is the word here. They want it to be a turnkey option for the employees to be able to start saving for retirement. And it's the same from their perspective. It's the same thing. It's the same type of plan.
Well, that's a lot of information.
Lots of information.
All right. So you and I were discussing earlier this week about my problem as a business owner who
Right.
owns multiple businesses, which, 3 businesses is a lot, but it's also a lot of, let's say that I really need to work around the financing side where I'm taking as many deductions as possible. Can I take a 401k deduction on each business?
Yeah. Okay. So great question. So the match that you give them is always a tax deduction. It comes right off your books. That whatever you're giving them comes off the books. The actual cost of the administration for the plan is also it's tax friendly. So it comes back to you in a tax credit. So for the first 3 years, the IRS changed this in 2019, and in 2019 the Secure Act was passed, and you're able to get basically half of your out of pocket expenses for a 401k plan, not including the match, but half of it back as a tax credit for the first 3 years, up to $5,000. So $5,000, you'd have to have a pretty massive company and big size plan to get up to that cost for a 401k plan. But you're able to get half of that in a tax credit. The other thing they added, most of the time, if you've had a 401k in the past, you had to opt into the plan, right? You opt in, you sign the form. Here's how much I want to put towards it. There's something called a QACA safe harbor. It's a qualified plan that you have to opt out first. So everybody's in, all the employees are in who's eligible, but you have to opt out, and they give you an additional $500 tax credit, whatever plan that is, whatever 401k plan you have. If you put an opt out feature, you get an additional $500 tax credit, and that's fresh from 2019.
Well, that makes it convenient for the employee as well as the owner, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, that barrier, getting people to opt into a plan is much more difficult than especially through your checking account. But if it comes out of your paycheck, it makes it much easier. So getting people to get past that psychological barrier of saving, that's the biggest thing that the IRS is trying to do right now.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about matching. So when a
Yeah.
business is matching the price, is it safe to match from 1% just to 10%, or do you find that most businesses go over the 10% mark for 100%?
Very, very few are doing anything over 4, to be honest with you. So let's talk about this like on a competition level. So we have a lot of companies who, and taking a step back, it's better to start low as a business owner than start high and have to bring it down, because in the eyes of the employee, it gets them to question the financial stability of the company, right? So one plan option that we do quite a bit, and this is for the cafeteria style plan, 401k plan.
So do I get mashed potatoes for the cafeteria side of the plan?
You do, yeah,
I
and green
do.
beans, but they're soggy. So, but yeah, it's so 25% on every percent up to 5. So, for example, and this is all based on gross salary. So, keeping it simple, let's say you're paying somebody $100,000 income. Okay, that means they would have to put in 5,000 of their own money in order for you to give them 1,250 per year. Okay, so that's a 25% on 5. That's that's how the lingo goes in the 401k world. And then you can create a 5-year vesting schedule, meaning if they leave within the year, you get that $1,250 back, and it goes into it's called a non-forfeiture account. If they leave in year 2, they only take 20% with them. So when you are building these cafeteria style plans, the owner is only allowed to put in 2% over the average eligible employee, including the zeros. So if you have 10 employees, half of them are doing 10%. The other half is doing 0. That's a 5% average, right? You're only allowed to do 7% of of what you pay yourself, or however the company is structured, if it's an S corp, Schedule C, which we can talk about that too. But you're only allowed to do 7%. So that's that restriction. And you're also only allowed to have, you cannot have more than 60% of the balance, of the overall balance. Everybody's
Well, I
balance
can't write
put
myself
together.
off big amounts of money for my 401k if it's just personally me.
Yes, if it's just you, that's considered a solo 401k. The solo 401k is you can do whatever you want as long as, because if you think about, let's say you have an employee, just one employee. If
Mhm.
they're not in and you have a safe harbor 401k, you can max out. But if you have 0 full-time employees and you only have, let's say you have a whole slew of part-time employees or independent contractors that are 1099,
Mhm.
you are technically opening up something called a solo 401k. All those, it's called annual testing, that goes out the door. You do not have to worry about what anybody's doing. You can max out. As an employee of your own company, you do 20,500, and then as an employer, you add an additional 40,500, so you can do $61,000 as a solo 401k, and you can make it all pre-tax, or you can do some of that Roth too. So
Mm.
when you are a solopreneur and you do not have full-time employees and it's all 1099 contractors or part-time, you have full freedom to be able to put away as much as you want. And there's actually plans out there. You can get even to 6 digits, well into the 6 digits. We have plans that people are putting in 300,000 or more pre-tax. So you can imagine the tax savings on that. And it basically comes off, your bottom line when you're paying your taxes. So if you're in a 25, 30% tax bracket, that's $100,000 tax savings right there.
Mhm. So there are two things I'd like to explain to people right now. Guys, if you are thinking about 401ks and this is something you're interested in, I want to start explaining a couple of different things. First of all, when Matt is talking plan, he is not talking portfolio. So this is not something that you guys are going to imagine that 401k or a type of 401 is part of your portfolio. It's the plan with inside your portfolio. So what Matt is talking about right now is the options you get or for your plan of your 401k. And this is important because one of the things I tell everybody when you're setting up your business and you're trying to learn about how to structure your business, it's always good to write a business plan. And inside your business plan, this should be the options that you are taking into consideration before you start your business. A, do I want to write a 401k for myself, or do I want to have a 401k for each individual employee I have? Now, this, as Matt is saying across the board right now, is how you want to start making your plan. Because when you confront Matt, Matt is going to look at you and say, or someone like Matt is going to look at you and say, for us to be able to work for you, we need to know your end game. And like I always tell all of my I don't want to use the word clients, all the people I help, I always tell them it's always good to have yourself a business plan that's well structured, financially and secure, because what ends up happening is you cannot really tell what you want to be able to offer your employees until you can see the forecast of the year prior to what you've already done. And this is going to help you structure that option for your 401k plan. Matt, do you disagree about any of that?
No, 100%. I think the mass majority of self-employed individual, whether they have employees or not, their company is their baby, right? They're putting everything, their blood, sweat, tears, and money into their company.
Mhm.
Um, you need to diversify, especially when you're talking about your own personal retirement. Diversifying, and that means, if you look at your company as one company, as one investment that you're investing in, and it's usually, most of the time, it's like a micro company, right? It's a small business. You're
Mhm.
putting all your eggs in one basket. You're putting all your eggs in one company and hoping that it works out, because hopefully one day you do want to sell your company. But what else is there? What if you can't sell? What if it's a business you can't sell? How else are you going to get there? Paying the bills, absolutely number one. Getting the income today, great. But looking down towards the future, that is also very important. And this is just one piece of the pie. And your business is another piece of the pie. So
Mhm.
having all these different pieces in place, it's not just diversifying your investments like you talk about, because the 401k, any of these retirement plans, it's a government program. It's an IRS code. 401k is an IRS code. It does not tell you what you're investing in. You can invest in Bitcoin, you can invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, but this is just a piece of the pie, and so is everything else. So you don't want to just diversify. You want to diversify your income. You want to diversify your portfolio or your retirement strategy, basically.
So I want to break you right there. You actually hit something on the head that I really wanted to discuss in this topic right away, and that is, is there a way for anybody who is doing Bitcoin to be able to reinvest in our 401ks using Bitcoin?
Yeah. Yes. 100%. So it's limited because it's still kind of a new idea, if you want. It's been around for a while, but until recently, just the last few years, you could not put it into a retirement plan. So there's 3 roles to every 401k. There's the third-party administrator, which would be someone like us. We keep you compliant. Then you have the investment strategist or the fiduciary. They're the ones who pick and choose the investments. You can outsource all these things if you wanted to. And then you have the record keeper / custodian. So the reason I brought that up is the record keeper or custodian, there's hundreds of those out there. Vanguard Fidelity is a very popular custodian. The record keeper is just let's just call it the 401k lingo version of a custodian. Okay. This is who holds your money where your investments are at. So Fidelity, for example, is one of the most popular ones. You cannot have Bitcoin inside of Fidelity. There are custodians, specialized custodians, that do allow you to invest in Bitcoin. It allows you to invest in the rental property across the street if you wanted to. You can literally invest in anything you want inside of the 401k. Let's just say almost anything. There's certain limitations out there, but Bitcoin is an actual. You are able to put Bitcoin in your 401k now. We have a specific an agreement with a custodian. It'd be the same type of custodian that you're putting a rental property in your IRA. It's can be the same thing in a 401k, because 401ks and IRAs, it's the same IRS qualified investment, which means it's qualified for retirement. So yeah, there's plenty of options to invest in almost anything you want.
Now, like such as a business as yours, when we are requiring your type of help, for example, can you explain what your business does in actuality for somebody such as myself?
Sure. Yeah. So third-party administrator is our terminology of our role in the 401k plan. So the compliance around a 401k is pretty heavy, especially when you get the employees involved, because the word fairness is thrown around quite a bit. So we're the ones who design it, and the designing comes in play when it has to do with how much you want to save for retirement, but also how do we keep you compliant so you can put as much as you want towards your 401k. So we're the ones who keep you compliant. We create it's called a plan document for you, and that is basically the map. What are you allowed? What's your goal of the plan? And then we file your annual filings for you, and then you do your annual testing. The annual testing comes into play when you have employees, and that's where that rule is: how much are you allowed to put away? How much of a balance can you have inside your plan? And if you fail those, it's because the plan design isn't right, or simply you just put too much away and you over contributed based on what you're allowed to do. So you will actually get a check back in the mail from the custodian or the record keeper, because you failed those tests. Doesn't mean you're getting audited. There's no fines or penalties or anything. It just means you put too much and we have to rebalance out the plan. So that's our role. And then we also act as the investment fiduciary. So you have to have certain, when employees are involved, only when employees are involved, you have to check certain boxes off as the menu that is built for them, for the employees. You can't just have, a small company stock and that's it. You have to have something called a QDIA, which means, let's say someone opts into the plan or doesn't opt out, depending on the plan type. Which investment are they going to choose? What if they don't choose an investment? So if they don't choose an investment, then the QDIA, the default fund that they go into, is a must. You have to have that on the menu. So a lot of people self-manage their own 401ks because they want to pick and choose the only thing. As long as you check off all the boxes, you're compliant. A lot of people don't want to deal with that because they're busy running their own business. They don't want to get audited and fined. So that's something that we handle for them too. It's called an investment fiduciary, and it basically, we are removing a lot of liability off of you as the plan sponsor. You have enough liability as a plan sponsor and the owner of the company. We are taking all those roles off of your shoulders so you don't have to worry about them.
Now, do you guys talk back and forth from the payroll company?
Yeah. 2022, integration's very easy. Even QuickBooks is very common. There's even record keepers / custodians that integrate with QuickBooks. So integration is so important these days. A lot of people think you go to a company where your payroll services, and it's the only option to make sure you don't have to have an extra staff member working on this for you. Integration is very easy. The hot companies are ADP, Paychecks. They're not the greatest 401k companies in the planet, and they can be quite expensive. But we have other record keepers that, like John Hancock, T. Rowe Price, that integrate with those payrolls. And there's something called a 360 integration, and there's a 180 degree integration. And it's how much information is being passed back and forth. Is it going one way or is it going two ways? And that's the difference between the two. So integration is so easy these days. If it says IRA after the retirement plan, so that'd be SEP IRA, simple IRA, payroll deducted IRA. Yeah, traditional IRA. Integration is very difficult. Mm-hmm. It is simple. Because they're meant to be simple and easy to integrate, so they don't have all these bells and whistles. 401ks, on the other hand, if it says 401k at the end of the name of the plan type, usually there is an integration in place, and we talk to you about that. There's even ways to add us as or a company like us as a third party to your payroll, to where we can pull whatever reports we need to in the background, and we don't have to ask you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so integration is huge.
So what's the difference between the IRA and a 401k in reality?
Yeah, so again, it comes down to what you're there's the two questions that we ask every single prospect or client that we talk to. One is, what's your priority? Number one. And then number two is, how much do you want to contribute? 401ks across the board have a much more favorable contribution calculation. You can usually put more in a 401k. You can customize them a little better. IRAs, yes, you can contribute a lot, but you also have to earn a lot. So, for example, we don't need to get into the nitty gritty here, but a SEP IRA is well known as a self-employed business owner's retirement plan option. You can use $61,000 into a SEP IRA. But the way the calculations work out, you'd have to be paying yourself $244,000 per year to max out that $61,000. In the solo 401k, and this is assuming you don't have employees, you only have to pay yourself $162,000 to be able to max out, and that's because it has much more favorable calculations in the 401k. So the IRA is great, simple, easy to turnkey, and it all has to do is, how much do you want to contribute? What if you don't want to go more than a certain percentage? Then we back down into that. So the goal is to not have to pay as many charges and fees and contribution limits. The goal is to save. Then we back that in. So those are the two questions: is how much you want to contribute, and what is the absolute main priority of this goal. And if you're a solar entrepreneur, those priorities don't really mean, you don't need to ask that second question of what is the priority, because if you want to save towards retirement as a solopreneur with no employees, there's only one option. You want to save for retirement, save money on taxes. So
that does run into a different issue, which I think a lot of people don't think about. let's talk pulling the money out in case something crap happens.
Yeah. Good question.
Okay.
Great
So
question.
everybody has one of those rainy days where something goes wrong and there is an oh crap button.
Yep.
Does 401k have an oh crap button?
They have a better, bigger oh crap button than the IRAs do. So basically, 401ks you can take loans against up to $50,000. And here's the funny thing: is the interest goes back to you. It's not going to the institution. So yes, that sounds great. Is a good idea? Not always, but use it as your last resort if you can. But up to $50,000, half of your vested balance is what you're allowed to do. So you'd have to have $100,000 that you can take with you. 50 of that can go. Now you also set up your parameters on when you want to pay yourself back. And it's much easier, so you can go a lot longer. The IRAs, you can take loans, but technically it's not a loan. You're withdrawing it, but you have 60 days to put it back in. If you do not put it back in after 60 days, and you can do the whole amount. There is no limitations on how much or what percentage on an IRA, any type of IRA, but you have 60 days to put the money back in, or you owe all the taxes that you've not paid yet, because these are pre-tax options, or maybe
there is an option to get taxed before you put it into the IRA, though, right?
Yeah. Yes. Roth. Yep. There's a Roth option, and honestly, there's something called a pre-tax option, and which which basically you're not you have to pay taxes today, but all the growth is tax deferred, just like the pre-tax option. So it's almost do the Roth. If you have a 401k, do the Roth option. But none of the IRAs have a Roth option, except for if you were doing a standalone Roth IRA by yourself. A SEP IRA does not have Roth. Simple IRA does not have Roth. I wish they would for the simple IRA, because employees absolutely should have a Roth IRA. But
that would have made it fair, right?
Yeah, it makes it fair. Honestly, that makes it more fair for the employer.
All right,
so
the I see situations like this when we start talking about the economy today. I know a lot of people used to look at it and say, well, I'm just going to take everything out of my 401k right now, and I'm closing out my 401k. I'm not going to ever use it again.
Yeah.
And then they go back and they find out that they owe taxes on that 401k. And they're like, well, why do I owe taxes on a 401k? It was mine in the first place.
Oops. Yeah.
So that's a bad thing to get into. If you guys have a 401k and you guys are putting money into it, always ask your employer if it's a transferable 401k. In other words, if you are moving jobs, see if it's a transferable from one job to another, so that way there you can still keep earning money on it.
Yep.
So say like I wanted to put a plan together and I wanted to do it on my own that was going to be sufficient for me to bring to you. Is there something on your website where I could go to your website and put ideas together about how to make this happen?
Yeah. So we have something called the evaluator on our website. And basically what you're going to do is go through the questions, and it has to do with what are your priorities, and it really will narrow down which plan type, and based on what your priorities are, what your goals are, if you have employees, if you do not have employees. And it takes 30 seconds to run through, and it actually will spit out a few options for you. So for example, if you go through the questionnaire, and whether this is, on a telephone call or on the website, if your goal is to max out your contributions, you have employees, we're going to push you towards either a simple IRA or a safe harbor 401k, because they have those pre-approved vesting and matching schedules that you can basically max out without any question whatsoever. Simple IRA has lower limits, but the 401k has higher limits, but both of them you can max out. And that comes down to the second question, is how much do you want to contribute? So that will run you through that, and it'll spit out a few options for you very quickly. And then it's kind of, let's do the research on those too, because there's so many options out there in the retirement plan space. Let's narrow it down just a little bit so you don't have to do research on all of them. And that's the whole purpose of that evaluator.
Great. So I have one more question before I ask my normal two big questions. And that's, I had to write it down. So obviously you guys can see me like looking down, or, you'll hear me looking down. So, can you explain higher level planning
Yeah,
to
yeah,
me?
yeah. Advanced strategies is a huge um, uh, piece of what we do because it's custom. They're custom. So getting well into the six digits of contributions is possible. Um, so Scott, you mentioned that you have three companies. You've
Yes.
mentioned that to me in the past. Okay,
Yep.
so one option is double dipping. Double dipping into multiple foreign. So you are allowed to have more than one 401k plan.
Mhm.
So, and whether you're an S corp, if you're Schedule C, K1, what they're all calculated slightly different, and we can get into that sometime. But um, as long there's something called controlled groups, and if you're deemed a controlled group by the IRS, it means you are not allowed to have more than one. You have to include all of your companies. And let me ask you this, Scott: how many of your companies do you have? Do you have employees?
Uh, one
Full-time employees.
one of my companies has full time employees. Yeah.
Okay. So quite often someone will come to us and say, okay, well, I have one company that does not have employees, one that does. Can I open a plan that can I open a plan that for the company that does not have employees? And if you are a controlled group, and you can even Google that and it'll tell you what a controlled group is. You have to include the employees in that retirement plan. So you have to offer a plan to your employees. But you are allowed to have multiple 401k plans. So another option is that you have a day job and you're starting a new company on the side. Just because you have one at your company at your regular day job, you are also allowed to have one on
For yourself.
for
Yeah.
yourself. And as long as your company is not offering a service to your day job, that's considered a control group. So let's say you started your company because you wanted to offer goods to your day job. You are not allowed to double dip. But if they aren't, then the first 20,500 is considered employee contributions. You cannot double dip that. But in every 401k plan, you're actually allowed to go up to $61,000. And the rest of the difference there is considered an employer contribution, right?
Mm.
So
Yep.
the match that they give you is considered employer. Profit sharing is considered employer. You can double dip that. So you are allowed to do employer contributions into your own 401k if you're maxing out. You can only get to that 20,500 once, whether it's with one plan or two plan, but you can double dip the difference up to the 61. So for example, $20,500 for the employee portion. And
Hmm.
the difference there is 40,500 if you haven't done the math yet, but you can do two of those, 40,500. And that alone gets you over $100,000 of deductions. On top of that, you've all heard of the word pension, right?
Oh yeah.
The options that are not there anymore these days, the old Ford and GM options.
Yeah, but the reason why
Pension,
they're not there, and let's be serious, is
yeah,
because um, we are not keeping employees in the field that long to be able to have a, a an area where you're available to give them that type of money anymore. I mean, not everybody sticks
yeah,
around for the golden watch anymore. You know what I mean?
100%. I mean, what they said the average lifespan of an employee at
It's
your
3
company
years.
is it 3 years now? My
3
goodness.
years
Okay,
now. Yeah, we
so
just went over that with another a gentleman I was talking to not too long ago, and he was like, the average lifespan of someone working in nowadays is 3 years. It's 3-year turnover before they decide to switch jobs. Now, what good is
I
that?
remember it
Because
was
the
7 years.
market,
Yeah,
yeah, you can't even do anything with that now. So that's the reason why I said earlier, I said if you're going to transfer jobs and you have a 401k, make sure that's a transferable 401k.
yeah. All 401ks can be transferred into another 401k or an IRA. Because it's the same. It's tagged as the same kind of money, qualified
Mhm.
money. The question is your new 401k or your new company allow you to do a transfer into, which
There's
most do, but and it's honestly, if it doesn't, you just ask your HR rep, can we do this? And if you don't, you just move it into an IRA. But you know,
the the pension part of what you were talking about before.
absolutely. So in the 401k space, you are allowed to stack plans on top of each other. So think of an upside down 3-tiered wedding cake. the bottom layer is the 401k. So that's the 20,500. The second layer is the profit sharing or employer contribution portion. That gets you up to the 61. So an additional 40,500 to get you up to that. Above and beyond that, it's called a cash balance plan or a pension or a defined benefit plan. The proper terminology of a pension is called a qualified benefit plan. So not necessarily how much you're putting in, what's the benefit coming out, which is a pension, right? The whole point of a pension is how much money am I going to get per month when I retire? That's the pension. The cash balance plan is considered a pension, but it's actually a balance that you can just walk away with. You don't have to worry about your monthly. That will get you, this is an age banded product program. So the older you are, the more you can put away. If you're 60 years old, you're putting over, you can do, when you add those 3 layers, over $300,000 per year pre-tax. That is a plan. And you can have, obviously we all know you can have employees with a pension, and the goal is to have a properly designed plan to where use the employer, because this is a tax play. This is a huge tax play, can take keep as much of that as you can. And how much do you have to give the employees? And everything's age-based. The older, if you're an older, say you're 65 years old, employer, and you have a bunch of young staff members, that's great. That's great for a cash balance plan, because you're not going to have to give them that much because they're not as close to retirement. It's all, again, fairness. They want to give the fairness of the pension plan to the older folks, the people who are approaching retirement. Age 65 is considered the IRS standard of retirement, because Medicare kicks in at 65 and so on.
Wait a second there. Are you sure about that? Because I see a lot of 70-year-olds still working.
Oh yeah. That's hence the government is giving tax credits, right? Hence the tax credits. Yeah. That's what they're doing.
That's
tax credits.
So Matt, I would love to bring you on maybe sometime next month and be able to get into deeper dive into this and maybe start picking away at some of the smaller stuff and putting some ideas together for people that are interested in this type of conversation.
More of a deep dive. Absolutely.
Yeah. I love deep dives. I think that getting into certain types of 401ks and how they're going to help people out is great. I have a worry zone when it comes to explaining 401ks, and that is as a business that's brand new. Okay. I mean, brand new. They're just kicking it off. When I start looking into this, let's talk money. Should I set a price limit before I start taking 401ks into an option? So should I be making like $100,000 a year before I start taking 401ks into an option?
I think that's very personalized to the industry. Let's say you have employees. You have to bring in, let's say you have a company that you have employees. Majority do not start with a 401k plan. Because you're pouring money right back into the company to get it going. You have so many, you start with a starting point with your cash flow and how much money you have to put towards the business. And then the rest of it is done through cash flow, right? There's no rush to do that. I think a lot of people feel like they have to, but you don't. And honestly, what I would do though, across the board, look into the payroll deducted IRA, because I call that a placeholder. It's a, no, we don't have 401k, but we do payroll deduction into your own retirement account for you. We will do that for you. And a lot of people say, oh, great. That's wonderful. It's something, again, that psychological barrier for the employee. But as far as budget is concerned, I mean, really you start off with an IRA option, or you start off with a cafeteria style 401k plan, and your out-of-pocket costs should be no more than a couple $100 a month, depending on, just assuming you have just a few employees. And when I say a couple hundred, if you have a few employees, it should be under $200 a month.
Great.
You can absolutely get a 401k plan underway for under $200 a month with a few employees.
Awesome. Matt, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. As always, everybody knows I ask these 2 questions, and my favorite questions for everybody I have on my podcast as well as my YouTube channel today. Welcome, YouTube.
Yeah.
And that is, what is your favorite book?
The Alchemist. Absolutely. I've read it I read it once, and then the audiobook is narrated by Jeremy Irons, which, that alone makes it worth listening to. But
Little
yeah,
drama right there.
right. It's it makes it very exciting. Yeah, it's about this. It's an old book. It's an old book, but the way it's told is through a story, even though it's a kind of um, a wisdom book, if you will.
Mhm.
And it's about a young boy who's trying to find this global treasure, and every hurdle that he comes across ends up being something that he learned that helps him get further and further. So in the whole point, especially in entrepreneurship, my goodness, being able to take these hurdles one step at a time and then learn from each one was the biggest takeaway, absolutely, from that book. And I'll read it again. I'll probably listen to it next time
Yeah, it
because you
becomes a
can't beat
bathroom
Jeremy
reader,
Irons.
right?
What's that?
It becomes
Yeah,
the bathroom reader.
right. Exactly. Exactly.
So,
It's a great
guys,
read.
anybody that's watching our YouTube channel or listening to our podcast, I am going to go over there and put The Alchemist down on the bottom as a link. You can get it from Amazon. And my last question is your location. I usually ask people, what's a hole in the wall dinner place that you like to go that most people don't know about that serves food? So, what would that be for you?
I absolutely love Japanese food. So I am in the mountains of North Carolina at the moment. Is where I'm living. And I gotta tell you, there's no good Japanese restaurant here, unfortunately. But a good Japanese steakhouse, and they're everywhere, in almost every town except for ours. There is one close, but don't go there. But that is my thing, Japanese steakhouse. Oh, I could eat that 3 times a day.
Great, great.
Yeah,
Matt, thank you very much for coming on our show. I hope to have you sometime next month so we can deep dive into this.
sounds
And
good.
if anybody was to look to get a hold of you, get a hold of your business, and
Yeah.
start inquiring on your services, where could they find you? And social media wise, how can they reach you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. It's easy to find me. And obviously the website is a great place to start too. It's lifeincrs.com. So that's lifeincrs.com. If you want to get on the evaluator, just same website /evaluator. And that's a great place to get started, so you kind of point yourself in the right direction.
Great, Matt. Thank you very much for coming on our show. I hope to see you again. And for all those that are listening to our podcast and watching our YouTube channel, thank you very much for watching us and listening to us. We look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.